Without a doubt, the best part of Square's Final Fantasy VII Remake is its battle system. A distillation of everything that has come before it, and a whole new thing in its own right, the hybrid real-time ATB system used makes for the most active and immersive Final Fantasy battle system to date. On the surface, it's a serviceable action game with a cool way of inputting commands, with its tactical mode slowing time down to a crawl, playing out the intricate animations of each of the characters and enemies before you select a command. Underneath that surface is a battle system of great depth that respects the core of the original game and blends cinematic action with strategy and responsive controls to present something much like the CGI movie Advent Children. You could sum up a lot of what the battle system is and where the mechanics came from by looking at the last three core entries in the Final Fantasy series: Final Fantasy XII, Final Fantasy XIII, and Final Fantasy XV. I'll be referencing some of the elements from each of these games throughout. This video is going to break down as much as possible the Final Fantasy VII Remake battle system. It'll be done as close to the order in which elements of the game are encountered from a playthrough, and footage is taken from a mix of the game's normal and hard modes. As with most things, it's best to start from the beginning. The game tells you right from the start how to attack. Press the attack button repeatedly and Cloud will do a combo of sword attacks. Hold down the attack button and Cloud will do a spin attack which hits enemies around and in front of him, and it hits 3 times. You can end a combo with a spin attack at any time during a string of attacks. Just hold the button down when you want to end the combo with a spin attack, and it's usually the best and most damaging ender. And when I say most damaging ender, I mean for his operator mode. Operator is Cloud's default stance. It allows him to attack with the 2 main attacks I've mentioned, and allows him to guard. Guarding reduces the damage taken from attacks, and also can prevent being knocked down or blown back by attacks, which means you recover faster and are able to act sooner. It's similar to how guarding works in Final Fantasy XV. Holding guard in that game reduced movement speed, required no real timing, and consumed a small amount of your resources. In FF15's case it was MP, but in Remake it reduces the damage taken and pauses the ATB gauge. But in both instances, it leaves you in a better position to attack from. Normal attacks don't cause a lot of damage, but they can cause hit stun on enemies, sometimes enough to interrupt attacks. The main use of normal attacks, other than damage, is to increase the ATB gauge. I'll talk about ATB soon, but so you know, each attack in the game causes differing damage, hit stun, ATB, heat, and some have added effects, such as the 4th hit in the combo causing a juggle state. Each attack has their own meter build value and differing hit states. It's not immediately obvious, but through playing the game you'll notice how enemies react differently to certain strings. By launching an enemy into a juggle state, you can land further combo damage whilst they're airborne, and they cannot recover. It's not a huge part of the battle system, but it can make killing enemies easier, as they cannot recover until they land. And it's pretty fun. Movement is handled using the control stick. You can move freely in combat. By running away from the enemies, you can flee combat entirely, but only in certain places. You can't flee from every battle. The final basic action you can take is dodging. Hit the dodge button to evade attacks, the benefit being that you don't take any damage at all if you evade correctly. Dodging doesn't have any invulnerability, so you'll have to judge your spacing when trying to evade. Dodges are good for acting out of normal attacks, letting you cancel some of the recovery frames to act sooner. It's much like how it was in Final Fantasy XV. In addition to all of this, each character has a unique ability that they can use. Cloud's unique ability is mode change, and he can freely switch between operator mode and his other stance, Punisher mode. Punisher mode is used to cause higher damage to punish the enemy when they are vulnerable. Press the attack button repeatedly and Cloud will swing the sword in a wide arc that will hit enemies in the path of the sword. Like Operator mode, you can hold the button down to perform a secondary attack. In this case, it's a sword plant. It's not massively useful on its own. It has a slow start up and short range, but imbues Cloud with the Berserk status for a short time, causing his attacks to do more damage. And speaking of slow, yeah, Punisher mode has slower startup on attacks than Operator, and slows Cloud's movement down to a snail's pace. Guarding during Punisher mode lets Cloud counter-attack melee attacks. He'll take some damage, but then immediately respond with a counter slash that stuns most enemies, putting most into pressure state. More on pressure later. If you mode change from Operator to Punisher in time with the enemy attack, you'll also perform the counter. A good thing to do is to hold guard in Operator and then mode change while still holding guard. If you're late, you'll block the attack and switch stance, and counter-attack multi-hit attacks. If you're early, you'll switch stance but still be guarding, meaning you'll counter anyway. I suppose you could call it an option select. Switching back to Operator from Punisher performs a low damage stance switching slash. Dodging whilst in Punisher mode will dodge normally, but put you back into Operator mode. Normal attacks in Punisher mode also generate ATB at a faster rate per hit in addition to higher damage. That covers the basic actions, but the core of the battle system is all about the ATB system,